There's a breaking point. We don't often talk openly about it, but it's always there, looming in the shadows. Every single one of us in nursing, we know it. We have even tried it at some point. That moment when you feel like you can't take another step, can't listen to another complaint, can't handle another shift. That overwhelming load we carry, the weight of being responsible for lives, it's immense. But here's the thing, what if we have all been handling it the wrong way? What if the very way we've been taught to cope are leading us straight into burnout? I remember the first time I felt it, the sudden pressure in my chest during a busy night shift. Patients coming in one after another, some with life-threatening conditions, others simply needing reassurance. I didn't have a moment to breathe. My focus had been on getting through, just pushing past the stress and the exhaustion, hoping the shift would end. But it never really does it? The work may pause for a moment, but nursing is relentless. The emotional weights carry over day after day after day until you are living in a perpetual state of stress. Back then I thought I could handle it. After all, we've trained to be resilient, to push through fatigue. Nurses are the strong ones, right? No, we're not stronger than others. But we do care for others, so we must be able to care for ourselves too. But the reality is different. That resilience we pride ourselves on, it's not limitless. It cracks. It wears down. And you know, the funny thing about stress is that we often only acknowledge it once it's too late. It creeps up slowly, unnoticed. I didn't wake up one day feeling burnt out. No, it was a gradual process. At first it was subtle, forgetting small things, getting frustrated over simple tasks, feeling a nagging irritation that just wouldn't go away. But I ignored it, thinking it was just part of the job. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. In fact, that is what sets the stage for a full-blown burnout. A burnout isn't just feeling tired. It's a physical, emotional and mental collapse. Your body starts to reject the very work you once loved. And that's when you realize this isn't just stress anymore. It's something far deeper, far more dangerous. And this is not just my tale. I've seen it in others. Colleagues who were once energetic and passionate, now dragging themselves through the shift, going through the motions. They are there, they're physically present, but mentally they're elsewhere. And the problem is, burnout doesn't just affect you, it affects the care you give. A burned out nurse is a compromised nurse. When your emotional reserves are depleted, you can't connect with your patients in the same way. You know that empathy you used to have, that critical aspect of nursing? Well, it starts to fade. So what's the answer? Well, it's not what we've been told. It's not just about taking a vacation or finding a hobby outside of work. Those are band-aids on a much larger wound. The unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves and the lack of a support system in place for nurses dealing with high levels of stress. My shift from psychiatry to the ER taught me one thing. In psychiatry, we care about mental health. In the ER, we forget it. In psychiatry, we talk about things, we sit down, we go through the emotions with each other, because that is the work. In the ER, well, we don't go through it because it's not in focus in our daily work. And the first step in managing burnout isn't about fixing the external factors. It's about acknowledging the internal ones. It's admitting that we are not superhuman, that we are allowed to feel overwhelmed. It is in this admission the healing starts. Roughly a year ago, I hit a wall. I had been in psychiatry for 6 years, transitioning to the emergency department. The shift in pace was intense, and I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. I kept telling myself I was fine, that I could handle it. But it wasn't until I found myself sitting in my car after a shift, hands shaking, unable to start the engine because I was too exhausted. And I only have a button, I don't have to turn the key. It was at that point I realized something had to change. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a tough day. This was the beginning of a burnout. I started small. The first thing I did was reach out to a colleague, a friend in the field who had gone through some similar struggles. Just talking about it was a relief. Sometimes we forget that sharing the load, even just verbally, can make a huge difference. It was like lifting a weight off my shoulders, knowing I wasn't alone in this. Then came the more practical change. I began setting boundaries.
Oh my God, can we do that?
That's something no one tells you about nursing. The job is infinite, but your time and energy are not. I made a conscious decision to leave work at work. I know it sounds impossible, and in many ways it is, but I made a rule for myself. When I left the hospital, I would take a few minutes to sit in my car, breathe deeply, literally leaving the stress behind before walking into my home. Luckily for me, I have roughly a 30-minute drive from the hospital to my home on a good day. So I have time to lay down my scrubs, so to speak. The second thing, learning to say no. As nurses, we are wired to say yes. Oh, do you want an extra shift? Of course I do. Do you want to stay late? Sure, I'll do that. But the reality is we cannot pour from an empty cup. Saying no isn't selfish, it's survival. And it's something I wish I had learned early on. And I have also made self-care a non-negotiable item. No, I'm not talking about bubble baths or spa days, though they would be nice. I'm talking about real, meaningful self-care. For me, that meant carving out time for exercise, getting enough sleep, and reconnecting with the things outside of work that gave me joy. Simple things like spending time with my son or going on trips with my family. It wasn't about a grand gesture. It was about consistency. A little bit of self-care every day goes a long way. The truth is, preventing burnout is about taking responsibility for our own well-being before it's too late. But it's also about recognizing that the healthcare institutions needs to step up. We can't do this alone. We need support from our workplace, whether that's mental health reassurance, adequate staffing, or just a culture that encourages breaks and rests. And we also need to normalize talking about this. Stress and burnout shouldn't be a taboo topic in nursing. It's not a sign of weakness to admit you are struggling. It's a sign of strength. And if more of us spoke up openly about the pressure we face, we could build a more supportive environment where burnout isn't the inevitable outcome. One of the ways you can do that is to talk with your friends. Show them this video and talk with them about what you experience and listen to what they experience. Because burnout isn't a personal failing. It's not something we can fix by just pushing through or pretending it doesn't exist. It's real, it's dangerous, and it's preventable if we are willing to acknowledge it and take steps to address it. And sometimes those steps are simple. Reach out, set boundaries, prioritize yourself, because at the end of the day, we can't take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves.
It sounds so simple when you say it like that.
And it's time to change how we think about nursing. Stress will always be a part of the job, but burnout doesn't have to be. The key lies in recognizing when enough is enough and giving ourselves permission to take a step back before we reach that breaking point. And if you want to get smarter on nursing, check out this video, which YouTube thinks you will like, and I'll be seeing you right over there. Ooh, I like the thumbnail, so click it and I'll be seeing you over there.